Hello, my name is Sophia, and today I'm going to share with you the most painful and at the same time most transformative story of my life. A story about family rejection, about feeling invisible in your own family, and about how a single moment at a wedding changed everything forever. Before I begin, I ask that you stay until the end, because what happened that day was something no one expected. Not me, not my parents, and certainly not the 200 guests who were present. If you've ever felt like the ugly duckling of the family, like someone who is never a priority, this story will touch your heart in a way you can't imagine. To understand what happened at the wedding, I need to go back in time and explain what the dynamic in my family has always been like. I'm the middle child. I have an older sister, Carolina, and a younger brother, Gabriel. And for as long as I can remember, I've always known what my place was in this family. Last. Carolina was always the perfect one. Excellent grades, Miss Congeniality, brilliant career in law. Everything she did became a reason for celebration. Gabriel, the youngest, was always the favorite, the baby of the family who never did anything wrong in my parents' eyes. And me. I was there. Present, but invisible. I grew up hearing things like, "Sophia, don't disturb, your sister is studying. Sophia, pay attention to your brother, he needs help. Why can't you be more like Carolina?" At birthday parties, it was common for my parents to take hundreds of photos of Carolina and Gabriel, while I appeared in 2 or 3, always in the corner, always as an extra in my own life. When I was 7, my birthday was postponed because it coincided with one of Carolina's school presentations. When I turned 10, the party was cancelled because Gabriel got sick. I learned early that my moments were never as important as theirs. In adolescence, the situation only got worse. While Carolina received a new car for her high school graduation, I got a used bicycle. When Gabriel wanted to do an exchange program, my parents sold a property to pay for it. When I asked for help paying for my graphic design course, they told me I should get a job and be more independent. I was 17 years old. I started working at a coffee shop to pay for my studies, while I watched my siblings receive everything without having to fight for anything. Christmases were especially painful. I remember one year when Carolina got a latest model laptop, Gabriel got a video game he'd been begging for months, and I got a cheap makeup kit that was clearly bought last minute at a pharmacy. It wasn't about material value, it was about the message that sent. You don't matter as much as they do. I would smile, say thank you, and die inside. I always died inside. At school, when other students talked about how their parents attended their performances, came to meetings, asked about their day, I would make up stories. I'd lie that my parents were too busy, too important. The truth was they simply didn't care enough. They attended everything for Carolina and Gabriel, but rarely my things. When I was in the school play, they didn't come because it was Gabriel's soccer game. When I had my first art exhibition at school, they arrived at the end, grabbed a snack, took a quick photo with me, and left within 15 minutes. When I graduated with my degree in graphic design, my parents didn't come to the graduation ceremony because it coincided with one of Gabriel's piano recitals. I was 22 years old and that hurt in a way that words cannot describe. I called my mother crying, asking how she could do that to me. She said, "Sophia, don't be dramatic. Gabriel is only 15, he needs us there. You're already an adult, you can go alone." I went alone. I received my diploma alone. I cried alone in the bathroom afterwards. None of my friends knew what was happening because I always hid it well. I was always good at hiding. After college, I got a good job at an advertising agency. I started earning my own money, building my independent life. I thought this would make me feel better, that the distance would help. But the pain didn't diminish. Every call from my mother talking about Carolina's achievements, every photo in the family group showing my parents with Gabriel, every holiday where I was clearly the last option, all of this continued to hurt me. I wanted not to care. I tried not to care. But you don't choose to stop wanting your parents' love. It doesn't work that way. I started therapy at 24. My therapist was the first person who validated what I was feeling. She told me it wasn't my imagination, that the treatment I received was real, and that I had every right to feel hurt. It took dozens of sessions for me to begin to understand that the problem was never me. That there was nothing wrong with me. That I wasn't less worthy of love. But understanding this in theory is one thing. Feeling it in your heart is completely different. Then came the announcement of Carolina's engagement. It was a giant event, a dinner at an expensive restaurant with 50 people. I was there, obviously, but I barely appeared in the photos. My mother posted 23 photos from the evening on Facebook. I appeared in 2, from far away, almost cut off. Carolina was radiant, my parents were proud, and Gabriel gave an emotional speech about how his older sister had always been his role model. When he finished, my mother cried with emotion. I wondered in my chair in the corner of the table, if anyone would ever cry with emotion for me. The following months were a whirlwind of preparations. Carolina called my mother every day to talk about dresses, flowers, invitations, honeymoon. I heard everything, because my mother put it on speakerphone while doing other things around the house. I visited my parents every Sunday for lunch, and all anyone talked about was the wedding. Carolina decided to have the ceremony at Villa Bella Farm. Carolina's dress cost 20,000 reais. Carolina is going to spend her honeymoon in Europe for a month. Carolina. 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 Always Carolina. I hope to be included in some meaningful way. I hope to be a bridesmaid, or at least part of the organization. But weeks went by and nothing. Carolina chose 3 bridesmaids, her best friends from college. Gabriel would be a groomsman, of course. And me. Nobody talked about my role. It was as if I was just another guest. 3 months before the wedding, I finally received that call from my mother. Sophia, dear, we need to talk about the wedding. My heart raced. Finally, I thought, she's going to include me in the preparations, ask me to be part of something special, recognize that I'm also a daughter, that I also matter. Look, she continued, and I could feel the hesitation in her voice. You know your sister's wedding is a very important event. Many influential people will be present. It's a day for Carolina to shine. You know how it is. Yes, Mom, I know. Of course. How can I help? My voice was hopeful, eager. There was an awkward silence on the other end of the line. That kind of silence you know comes before something bad. Well, your father and I thought that maybe it would be better if you didn't sit with the family at the ceremony. You know how it is, the photos, the table organization, the dynamics. We think it's better if you stay more discreet, more in the back. You understand, right? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My breathing failed. My vision blurred. Discreet. Mom, it's my sister's wedding. I'm her sister. My voice was breaking, but I was trying to maintain composure. Yes, dear, but you understand, right? It's her day. We don't want distractions. She deserves all the attention to be on her, and sometimes you have a way of, well, you know, we just think it's better this way. You'll be there, you'll participate, just in a more discreet way. That's not a problem, is it? Distractions. She called me a distraction. Me, her daughter, the bride's sister, was a distraction that needed to be hidden. In that moment, something broke inside me. It wasn't a dramatic, loud break. It was silent, deep, definitive. It was as if the last spark of hope of being loved by them had been extinguished. Okay, Mom. Whatever you want. It's Carolina's day after all. My voice was dead, mechanical. She seemed relieved. I'm glad you understand, dear. I knew I could count on you. You've always been so easygoing, so easy. Not like your sister who is so detail-oriented and demanding. You've always been the easiest to deal with. I hung up the phone and cried for 3 straight hours. I cried years of rejection, decades of being the second choice, a lifetime of being invisible. I called my therapist in desperation. She managed to fit in an emergency session that afternoon. When I told her what had happened, she just shook her head and said, Sophia, you don't have to go to this wedding. You have permission to protect your heart. But I knew I would go. Because a part of me, That inner child who still hoped for love and acceptance, still had a thread of hope that something would change. The following weeks were torturous. I saw my mother and Carolina posting photos of the preparations on Instagram. The bridal shower. The dress selection. The cake tasting. The party decoration. The photo shoot. Each post was a stab. I wasn't invited to anything. Absolutely nothing. My mother posted a photo with the caption, "My loves," hugging Carolina. 23 people commented about how alike they were, about how beautiful the mother-daughter love was. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I just looked and closed the app. A week before the wedding, Carolina sent me a message. "Hi, Sophie. Just confirming that you're really coming, right? Mom said you were kind of on the fence." I didn't even know my mother had said that. I replied, "Yes, I'll be there. Wouldn't miss my sister's wedding." She responded with a heart emoji and didn't say anything else. "No, thank you. No, glad to have you there." Nothing. Just an emoji. In the days leading up to the wedding, I almost gave up on going at least 20 times. I bought a long navy blue dress, discreet as they wanted. Nothing flashy, nothing that would divert attention. I did my nails, my hair, my makeup. I tried to convince myself that everything was okay, that one day I would get over all of this. But the truth was I was dying inside. The night before the wedding, I had a panic attack. My chest tightened, I couldn't breathe, I thought I was going to pass out. I called my best friend, Julia, crying. She told me, "Sophia, you don't owe these people anything. Not even your blood obligates you to accept being treated like this." But I told her what I told myself. I need to go. I need to see this through. When the wedding day arrived, I woke up with a tightness in my chest that didn't go away. I looked at myself in the mirror after getting ready. I was beautiful, elegant, but my eyes were sad. They were always sad when it came to my family. I drove to the farm alone. The ceremony would be at 4 in the afternoon. I arrived at 3:30. The place was stunning. Thousands of white flowers, lights hanging from the trees, decoration that must have cost a fortune. Everything screamed fairy tale. Everything was perfect. When I parked and got out of the car, I saw my mother at the entrance greeting guests. She was wearing a light pink dress, perfectly made up, radiant. When she saw me, her face changed. It wasn't joy. It was something between concern and irritation. She came to me immediately, looking around as if she wanted to make sure no one was watching our interaction. "Sophia, good that you came. You look pretty. But you remember what we talked about, right? You stay in the back of the ceremony, okay? And then, at the reception, you sit at table 15. I left your name there. Table 15. Later, when I looked at the seating chart at the entrance, I discovered it was the most distant table, almost hidden behind a decorative column, along with distant cousins my parents barely knew. People who were invited out of obligation, not out of love. I was an obligation. I always was. I swallowed hard, swallowed the tears, swallowed the humiliation. "Okay, Mom. Wherever you want." She seemed relieved again. She touched my arm quickly, a mechanical gesture without any real affection, and returned to her post as perfect hostess. I walked to the back of the ceremony space. There were rows and rows of white chairs decorated with satin ribbons. The first rows were marked with golden signs: bride's family, groom's family, groomsmen. I kept walking, passing the chairs for close friends, work colleagues, acquaintances. Finally, I reached the last row. There was no sign, no special decoration. Just empty white chairs. I sat in the last chair of the last row, against the glass wall that surrounded the space. From there, I could barely see the altar. I could barely see anything. People started arriving. Well-dressed couples, happy families, excited friends, all being directed to their seats by a team of uniformed receptionists. I saw my uncles, cousins, family acquaintances. Some saw me and waved from afar, but no one came to talk to me. After all, I was back there, isolated. Clearly I wasn't supposed to be approached. I saw my father, impeccable in his tuxedo, laughing with important guests, those who could do business with him. I saw Gabriel, handsome in his groomsman's suit, taking selfies with the bridesmaids. The music started. It was that classic wedding song, Here Comes the Sun, in an instrumental version. The guests stood up. I also stood up, although no one could see me back there. The bridesmaids entered first, beautiful in lavender dresses. Then Gabriel with his partner. Then my parents, walking together, bringing Carolina down the aisle. She was stunning. She really was. The dress was French lace, the veil endless, the bouquet perfect. She was the fairy tale princess. And I was nobody. The ceremony began. The officiant, a man with a deep, eloquent voice, spoke about love, union, family, commitment. He spoke about how Carolina and the groom, Raphael, were soulmates. He spoke about how their families were united that day. He mentioned my parents, he mentioned Raphael's parents, he even mentioned Gabriel. He didn't mention my existence once. I was a ghost at my own sister's wedding. Tears began to fall silently down my face. I tried to wipe them away discreetly, but I couldn't stop crying. The couple exchanged emotional vows. Carolina cried. Raphael cried. My mother was sobbing in the front row. Gabriel had tears in his eyes. It was beautiful. It was moving. And it was the final confirmation that I would never be an important part of this family. I was about to get up and leave quietly when something happened that no one, absolutely no one, expected. The officiant was giving that traditional speech about family being the foundation of love, about how family ties make love stronger, when suddenly, Carolina raised her hand, interrupting him mid-sentence. The entire hall fell silent. A heavy, confused silence. The officiant stopped, looking at her without understanding. Raphael looked at her worriedly. My parents looked at each other with an expression that mixed confusion and panic. What was happening? "Excuse me," Carolina said, her voice echoing through the microphone attached to her dress. Her voice was trembling, loaded with emotion. "Before we continue, I need to do something important. Something I should have done a long time ago." She looked directly at where I was, at the back of the hall, hidden behind 200 people, invisible as always. Our eyes met. "Sophia, can you come here, please?" My heart stopped. I literally felt it stop for a second. All those 200 people turned around at the same time, looking for who Sophia was, where Sophia was. The whispers began. I was completely paralyzed in my chair, unable to move, unable to process what was happening. "Sophia, please. You need to be here. You always needed to be here." With trembling legs, I stood up. I felt my legs weak, my heart racing, my breathing irregular. I started walking down the aisle. Each step seemed like an eternity. 200 pairs of eyes watching me. I heard the whispers. "Who is she? Is she a relative? Why was she back there?" I saw my parents' faces. My mother was pale, her face tense. My father was red, clearly uncomfortable and irritated. Gabriel looked confused. Raphael had a kind expression, as if he knew something the others didn't. When I finally got near the altar, my legs almost failed. Carolina let go of Raphael's hands and took mine. Her hands were trembling. Or were mine trembling? Maybe both. She was crying. Tears were running down her perfect makeup, smudging the carefully applied mascara. "I need to say something," she began, her voice breaking, looking at all those present, then at our parents, then at me. "My sister Sophia is here today, but she almost didn't come. And when she did come, our parents asked her to stay hidden in the back, away from the family, because throughout her entire life, this has been the message we've given her, that she doesn't matter as much as the rest of us." You could hear a pin drop. The silence was absolute, heavy, suffocating. My mother closed her eyes, as if she wanted to disappear. My father was looking at the floor. Gabriel was open-mouthed. The guests were shocked, some visibly uncomfortable. Carolina continued, and each word that came out of her mouth was like a bomb exploding. But the truth that no one here knows, is that there would be no wedding today if it weren't for Sophia. You don't know, but 2 months ago I had a complete nervous breakdown. The pressure from work, from the law firm expecting me to bill millions, from the perfect wedding I had to organize, from always being the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, the perfect bride. I couldn't take it. I broke. She squeezed my hands tighter, as if she were holding on to me to keep from falling. It was Sophia who found me crying on the floor of my apartment at 3 in the morning, after I called her in desperation. It was she who dropped everything, drove 40 minutes in the middle of the night, and stayed with me all night while I had one panic attack after another. It was she who in the following days took me to the doctor, to the therapist, who held my hand during the crises. Tears were now running down my face uncontrollably. I had no idea she would say this in front of everyone. And when I couldn't get out of bed, when I couldn't even look at the wedding to-do lists without panicking, it was Sophia who took over everything. It was she who finalized the flower choices, who designed and printed the invitations because she's a graphic designer and incredibly talented, who went to all the meetings with vendors in my place, who coordinated the decoration of this place you're seeing here. Half of this wedding was organized by Sophia. She looked around, at the beautiful decoration, at the perfect details. All of this that you think was my work, was her work. I was sobbing now, unable to hold back. Years of pain, of rejection, of feeling like I was never enough, all coming to the surface in that moment. Carolina pulled me closer, hugging me while she continued speaking. And she did all of this, everything, without asking for anything in return. Without expecting recognition. Without expecting gratitude. Because she loves me unconditionally, even though she has never received that love back from our family. Even after years of being treated as secondary, as less important, as a distraction. She looked directly at our parents when she said that last word. The guilt on their faces was visible to everyone. Sophia, you are not a distraction. You never were. You are the glue that holds this family together, even when no one recognizes it. You are the person with the most generous heart I know. You are talented, intelligent, beautiful, and I was complicit in making you feel otherwise all your life. I saw how our parents treated you differently, and I did nothing. I accepted the role of favorite and let you be forgotten. And today, on the most important day of my life, I need everyone to know the truth. You are the most important person in this room to me. The hall was completely silent. Some people were crying. Others were visibly embarrassed. My mother was covering her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Carolina turned to the officiant, who was as emotional as everyone else. I will not continue this ceremony until my sister is by my side, as my maid of honor, where she should always have been from the beginning. Where I should have had the courage to place her months ago, no matter what anyone thought. She looked at the 3 bridesmaids, who nodded with tears in their eyes. One of them, Patricia, whom I knew vaguely, said loud enough for everyone to hear. She should always have been first, Carol. Always. The entire hall began to applaud. First a few people, then more, until all 200 guests were on their feet, applauding. I couldn't see anything through the tears. I couldn't process what was happening. Carolina hugged me tight, so tight I could barely breathe, and whispered in my ear, just for me to hear, "Forgive me for taking so long to do this. Forgive me for not being the sister you deserved. Forgive me for being a coward. I love you. I've always loved you. And I need you to know that." When we separated, I looked at my parents. My mother was crying copiously now, her face red, completely destroyed by guilt. My father had tears in his eyes, something I had never seen in my life. He couldn't look me in the eyes. Gabriel approached and hugged me too, whispering, "Sorry, sis. I didn't realize. Sorry." Those words, coming from him, from the younger brother who had always been the favorite, meant more than I expected. The ceremony continued, but now I was there beside my sister, wearing one of the flower tiaras that the bridesmaids wore, which Patricia took from her own hair and placed on mine. I held Carolina's bouquet during the vows. I was by her side when she said yes. I was there when they kissed and everyone applauded. I was there, finally, where I should always have been. When the newlyweds walked down the aisle as husband and wife, Carolina took me by the hand and made me walk beside them. Not behind, not hidden, but together. During the reception, everything changed. My mother came to me before we even started dinner. She was destroyed, her eyes swollen from crying so much. Sophia, I have no words. I have no excuses. What I did to you, what we did. She couldn't continue, sobbing. My father was beside her, and for the first time in my life, he spoke to me with real emotion in his voice. We failed you. We failed as parents. And there is nothing we can say or do now that erases that. But we need you to know that we love you. Even though we never showed it. Even though we made you feel otherwise your entire life. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say it was too late, that love without action means nothing, that they destroyed my self-esteem, my ability to feel worthy of affection. But all that came out was, I know you love me. But love without respect, without consideration, without making me feel important. That love hurts more than the absence of it. My words hit them like a slap. My mother sobbed louder. We're sorry, she said. We're sorry. We're sorry. She repeated it several times, like a mantra, as if the words could undo decades of pain. We want to try again, my father said, his voice thick with emotion. If you give us a chance, we want to do things differently. We want to really get to know you. We want to be present. I know we don't deserve it. I know it's asking too much after everything, but... I looked at them, at these two imperfect human beings who gave me life but forgot to give me what I needed most. Part of me wanted to refuse, wanted to protect my heart from more disappointments. But another part, that inner child who always wanted to be loved by them, whispered, give them a chance. Just one. I need time, was all I could say. I need to process all of this. But we can talk. With time. They nodded, looking relieved and grateful even with my cautious response. The rest of the night was surreal. People who had never spoken to me came to congratulate me, hug me, say that what Carolina did was beautiful. Uncles and aunts who always ignored me suddenly wanted to talk, learn about my life, know about my work. It was strange and uncomfortable, but also liberating in a way. Carolina didn't leave my side all night. Between dances with her husband, between greetings to guests, she always came back to me, included me in conversations, introduced me as my sister, my maid of honor, the person who made all of this possible. When the night ended and guests started leaving, Carolina pulled me to a quiet corner of the hall. Thank you, she said. For everything. For saving me when I broke. For holding my hand even when I never held yours. For being better than all of us. You've always been the best of us, Sophia. Always. I hugged my sister and, for the first time in a long time, felt that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Not overnight. Not magically. But with time, with effort, with real changes. That moment at the altar wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. After the wedding, my parents reached out to me and suggested family therapy. I accepted, but with conditions. No empty apologies, no promises that wouldn't be kept. We wanted real changes or nothing. The first sessions were brutally painful. I had to listen to my parents trying to justify years of emotional neglect. I had to hear that they didn't realize, that it wasn't intentional, that they loved all their children equally. But the therapist didn't let anything slide. She confronted them. She showed patterns. She asked difficult questions. It took months for us to really start making progress. My father admitted that he identified more with Gabriel because he was also male, because sports and masculine interests were his comfort zone. My mother admitted that she saw herself in Carolina, that she lived through her achievements, that there was an unconscious competition with me because I was different, more independent, less in need of external validation. These admissions were painful to hear, but also necessary. Today, 2 years after the wedding, my relationship with my parents is still under construction. It's not perfect. It probably never will be. But it's different. They make a real effort now. My father showed up at my art exhibition last month and stayed until the end, talking to each person about my work, visibly proud. My mother calls me every week, not to talk about Carolina or Gabriel, but to ask about me, about my life, my projects, my feelings. It's strange. It's new. It's uncomfortable sometimes. But it's progress. Carolina and I are closer than ever. She admitted in therapy that she always knew about the different treatment, but was afraid to confront our parents because she benefited from the position of favorite. She had been carrying guilt about it for years. That moment at the wedding, she told me later, was when she finally had the courage to do what was right, even if it meant exposing our entire family in front of 200 people. She said it was the scariest and most liberating act of her life. For me, it was the validation I had waited for my entire life. Gabriel has changed too. He's 19 now and in college. He reaches out to me to talk about things we never talked about before. About what it was like to be the favorite, about the pressure that brought, about how he feels guilty for not noticing my suffering. We're building a real sibling relationship, not just people who share DNA and grew up in the same house. But the most important change was in me. I learned that my value doesn't depend on my family's recognition. I learned that I can love people and still set healthy boundaries. I learned that being invisible was their choice, not a reflection of my value as a person. I learned that I deserve love, respect, consideration, and that I don't need to beg for it. I learned that I can forgive without forgetting, that I can give chances without being naive. The most important moment of my life wasn't when my parents finally saw me. It was when I finally saw myself. When I looked in the mirror and recognized a strong, resilient, talented woman who survived years of emotional neglect and still kept her heart open. When I realized that the child who grew up feeling secondary transformed into an adult who refuses to be treated as such. When I understood that self-love isn't selfishness, it's survival. I still have difficult days. I still have triggers. When I see old family photos where I'm in the corner or absent, it still hurts. When I hear stories of loving and present families, I still feel a pang of envy. When my parents fail, and they fail sometimes because changing decades of patterns doesn't happen perfectly, I still question whether I should have given this chance. But then I remember that moment at the altar. I remember my sister holding my hands, exposing our truth to the world. I remember the applause, the recognition, the validation. And I remember that I deserved that moment. I always deserved it. If you're listening to me now and this story resonated with you in some way, I want you to know some things. First, what you felt, what you feel, is valid. No matter what they tell you, no matter how many times they try to minimize your pain or say you're being too sensitive. Your pain is real and you have the right to feel it. Second, you are not the problem. If your family makes you feel invisible, secondary, less important, the problem is with them, not with you. There is nothing wrong with you. Third, you have choices. You can choose to set boundaries. You can choose to distance yourself from people who hurt you, even if they're family. You can choose to give chances if they demonstrate real changes, or you can choose to protect your heart. Both choices are valid. And fourth, perhaps most important, you don't need to wait for someone to validate you to start valuing yourself. I waited 26 years for that moment at the altar. 26 years waiting for my family to see me. And when it finally happened, it was liberating and beautiful. But the real liberation came when I stopped seeking external validation and started validating myself. When I started celebrating my own achievements, recognizing my own value, treating myself with the love and respect I deserved all along. If you're a father or mother and you're listening to this, do an honest reflection. Is there an invisible child in your family? Do you have a child who is always the second option, whom you unconsciously neglect, who receives less attention, less affection, less recognition? If the answer is yes, or if you're not even sure, that in itself is a problem. There's still time to change this. Don't wait for a wedding, a crisis, a tragedy or a breakup to see what has always been in front of you. Your children won't wait forever. One day, they'll stop trying. And when that happens, it may be too late to fix it. That day at Villa Bella Farm, 2 years ago, changed my life. But not in the way you imagine. It wasn't the public recognition that healed me. It wasn't my parents' apology. It wasn't even my sister's courageous act, as significant as it was. What really healed me was the decision I made afterwards, the decision to choose myself, to prioritize my mental health, to set boundaries, to demand to be treated with dignity, not to accept crumbs of affection and call it love. Today, when I look back, I still see that 7-year-old girl whose birthday was postponed, that teenager who worked to pay for her studies while her siblings received everything handed to them, that young adult whose graduation went unnoticed. And my heart aches for her. But I also see the woman she became. A woman who transformed pain into strength, rejection into resilience, invisibility into self-discovery. And that woman, I'm proud of. My name is Sophia. For 26 years, I was the invisible daughter. The forgotten sister. The one who stayed in the back. Today, I refuse to stay in the back of anywhere, especially my own life. And if you identified with my story, I hope you refuse too. I hope you stand up, come out of the shadows, and claim the space that has always been rightfully yours. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be in the front row of your own life. Don't accept less than that. Never again. This was my story. Thank you for listening to me until the end. If it touched you in any way, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Leave a comment telling your own experience, because healing happens when we share our truths. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories of overcoming and transformation. And always remember, you were never invisible. Some people just weren't looking properly. But you can start seeing yourself. And when you do that, everything changes. Until next time.